Welcome to the Hypnotorious Podcast. I'm David Barron. With me here is John Wylie. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Every week, or at least every week that we diligently try, we put on the Hypnotorious Podcast, which is marketed toward anyone interested in hypnosis, regardless of their skill level or their exposure. If you think hypnosis is interesting, you're going to find some interesting things here. If you're a professional hypnotist, I think you'll find some very interesting things here as well. So,
absolutely.
John has a great book out. I always like to plug it. John, I'll let you plug it yourself.
Oh, my book's called The Ultimate Guide to Hypnosis, what you need to know to get the change that you want. And it's all about hypnosis, what it is, what you can do with it. There's a really cool section in there that's one of my personal favorites, and I think is yours too, David, on research that's been done.
Yes.
Some of the more modern recent research that's been done on hypnosis showing its efficacy for a whole laundry list of different things, from pain to weight loss, smoking cessation. A lot of those things that hypnosis is used for most often.
And you also, giving you a plug, have your practice in Boise, Idaho.
Yep.
And you've been doing this for quite some time. So John is definitely one of the skilled people in the field. What I wanted to mention, I also have a hypnosis practice. I get a lot of comments and questions online from people. And I think this is relevant to what you had just said about all the research about hypnosis. And I have gotten this before, where someone has an idea, the metaphor, and again, I hope I don't make the person who called me too self-conscious about this, but he called me with an idea that was planted in his mind from the movie Lucy and the movie Lawnmower Man. Now, if you're not familiar with those two movies, Lawnmower Man came out in the 90s, I think it was, and it was about this fellow who, I think it was a Stephen King book. He was a retarded, mentally disabled person who just mowed lawns, but he entered into this research project and his brain got reprogrammed and he started to have this super sort of memory, mental facility. It went totally bizarre. Similar movie, much more recent, last couple of years, is Lucy. And what's that incredible actress who...
Oh, gosh. I'm not good with actors and actresses' names. I can see
one of the most
remember
attractive women actresses that we know of. But she played a person who got ingested a drug accidentally, and it did relatively the same thing. I mean, she just gave her super mental powers. And so this individual contacted me, and his metaphor, he says, can you just put some sort of metaphoric chip in my mind, in my brain, so that I function at this optimum speed, like in the movie Lucy or like in Lawnmower Man. And it took me a while, even though I've had questions like this before. It took me a while to sort of get an understanding of what he was trying to accomplish and what he was asking. But it also made me realize that some people have a completely unrealistic expectation of what hypnosis can and can't do.
Right.
The short version is no, that is not what I'm aware of that hypnosis can do. I can, in many ways, sort of program your subconscious mind and help it to learn faster. I can't teach you by a simple series of hypnosis sessions. I can't teach you to play the piano, but I can increase your motivation to play incredibly.
Right.
I can sort of make a neurological pathway so that learning what you play is a lot easier, but it's no substitute at all for practice.
Right.
It's just not a substitute for practice.
Right.
And I like to reference the book by Robert Greene called Mastery. And it's an incredibly well-researched book. He makes it clear, based on a lot of evidence and a lot of research, that when you do a skill and you practice it at least 10,000 hours, something starts to change. It begins to affect your entire neurology in a way that what you learn becomes second nature, and you can make modifications and additions and augmentations to everything you've learned in a way that's really deeply organic. And he talks about Mozart, for example, and how he learned at such a young age, and that he was able to make compositional changes no one had ever been aware of, in his early 20s. But again, we go back to it's not a substitute for practice.
Right.
And so I have made a somewhat of a list of what hypnosis can and can't do. What it can do is it can change a habit or a pattern. And that habit could be emotional. It could be a behavioral habit as well. An emotional habit would be like getting angry at certain triggers, so it can change triggers. It can't give you the superpower ability to fly, but it could for momentarily make you believe you can up until you actually test it and you hurt yourself seriously.
Can alter perceptions in that way.
Yeah, good point.
It can alter subjective reality, not necessarily objective reality.
Yes, thank you. That's a good distinction. Okay. So, and sometimes it can also enhance beliefs, and that alone is a very significant change, I think.
Oh, yeah.
A good example. Let's say you want to play the piano, and you just have an innate, and you've tried and you have had some success, but you hold an innate belief that learning the piano is hard and that you are bad at it.
Yeah, we call that a limiting belief.
Okay, there you go. A limiting belief.
Yeah.
Changing those is not going to prevent you from having to practice.
Right.
But it makes practicing and how you think about practicing and learning the piano incredibly different, positive. So, yeah, hypnosis can change beliefs in a significant way if we're aware of how limiting it is. And so, I could make someone believe they have superhuman mental ability, and they may go out and surprise themselves. I don't know. It could be by accident, or it could be just by the confidence in their belief. But it's not something I can ever promise.
Right. Yeah. So would you say, David, that basically what hypnosis can do, this is how I think of it. I'd like to hear your take on it.
Sure.
Hypnosis is a way to optimize our mental software, so that we can learn better, so that we can retain more information. Use what we already have in the best possible way, removing the bugs, so to speak, those limiting beliefs, those bad habits that we have, so that we're freed up to operate more optimally.
Yeah. I think that's a great example. I have occasionally, when I do what is the mind, instead of dividing it into the conscious and the subconscious mind, I simply list it as a bunch of intents. And intents can be an arrow. So you have an intent to do one thing, it's pointing in this direction. But you have another intent, and it's pointing slightly in another direction. And you have other intents that point completely opposite. Most of the time they work together. But when you want to learn the piano, but you've been programmed to believe that you're stupid, those two intents clash with each other.
Right.
And so it can change it so that all of those programs, those beliefs, those intents are working in the same direction. And that can really feel like a superpower. You feel like you have no obstacles in the direction you're going. But as far as someone asking me, can I give them cosmic consciousness? No, I don't even know what the heck that is. Good luck with that. Or open their third eye. That's not something I'm familiar with in hypnosis. Yeah. So when you said what hypnosis can, restate again what you said hypnosis can do, because I really like that.
Well, basically, my view is actually pretty similar to. In my book, I quote the definition for hypnosis that the American Psychological Association uses, and I like it. It's pretty useful, and there's a lot of different very useful definitions out there. But basically, they say that when using hypnosis, and of course we're talking about formal hypnosis, not all the naturally occurring stuff. When using hypnosis, one person is guided by another. The client is being guided by the hypnotist or hypnotherapist to respond to suggestions for changes in subjective experience, alterations in perception, sensation, emotion, thought, or behavior. And I'm reading that right out of my book. But I think that's really good, a description of what hypnosis can do, and also it alludes to what hypnosis cannot do. Hypnosis is not going to change objective reality. It will and can and does modify, hopefully in positive, productive ways, subjective reality.
Right. Yeah. Good point. So, for those people who are listening who are curious about hypnosis and don't have a huge experience with it, think about limiting beliefs. Think about things that you wanted to do, but you made it an excuse to not do it. And it was just an excuse. Limiting subjective reality also includes triggers, responses, emotional responses. And
right.
Amazingly, I've dealt with people who've had very severe cravings, some mostly for tobacco and nicotine, but occasionally drugs. And it's amazing how a part of this is physical. That the body is doing something, but when you change the subjective experience of it, they don't respond to that anymore, and it is as if the craving isn't there.
Right. Underlying all those things is always, even though there's a physical component, there's almost always, and maybe even always, an emotional component to that problematic behavior.
Right.
There are emotional, affective drivers underneath that.
Right.
And we see these things all the time working with people with hypnosis in any kind of a problem. And hypnosis is awesome at resolving those things if you know how to do it.
Right. In most of the work I do when I'm working with somebody over a course of a couple sessions, the first session is I almost always try and get toward first of all, what they're responding to, what they want to change, and the emotional response that they would rather have. So when I'm listing, what do you want, what would you rather be experiencing? And they say, well, I'd rather be working out, or I'd rather go for a walk. Okay, that's good, but that's a behavior. Let's talk about what would motivate that behavior. What positive feeling would you have that, if it just kept growing stronger and stronger, would compel you to do those things? And for a lot of people, it would be self-confidence or self-esteem or self-acceptance, but something that is really positive, or a sense of drive. That was someone I worked with recently. He really admired the quality of drive in other people. So he had a really good idea of what that was like. And when we talked about and built that sense of drive in him, he was like unstoppable. So, yeah. And again, it's about the emotional response. I think you're right about that, John.
So, yeah. So based on what we've talked about so far, some of the specific things that we can do with hypnosis is, we can eliminate fears and phobias. We can do things that alter a person's subjective experience. We can also alter a person's perception. Mm-hmm. One of the really cool things that people can experience in formal hypnosis, and also they experience on a day-to-day basis, are things like hallucinations. People hallucinate all the time. That's an alteration in their perception. Either they'll have a positive hallucination where they see something or they perceive something, because it can be auditory too, not just seeing, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or even feeling something that really isn't there. Or they can not perceive something that really is there, a sound or and we work with that a lot. I know with my clients, and I know you do this too. Once we get to a certain level of hypnotic depth, then we use some wording to help them to ignore distractions, which are normal and natural. In an office setting, there are going to be background sounds, but we can actually have them not perceive those sounds, or if they do perceive them, they will work to our benefit, help send them even deeper. That is an alteration of perception. Right. We can also alter sensations, bodily sensations, like we can make a part of the body feel cold or warm or numb. That's a really effective method with dealing with pain, right? Yeah. Is what they call like glove anesthesia or similar things. Right. And of course, we can alter emotions too. We can alter thoughts. Instead of, for example, with my smoking clients, I use a process where I have them practice imagining one of those old triggers that used to cause them to light up. But now we replace that. We replace that direction that they go in. Instead of smoking a cigarette, now they take one deep breath and they relax and they think about something else, something that they really want, mm-hmm. something that's beautiful or pleasant or really appealing for them. And so in that way, we can alter their train of thought. Right. Of course, and alter behaviors too.
One of the things that you made me think of a couple of things. One of the things that I do is once we've isolated what the emotional state they want is, I have them practice that, and then mm-hmm. let the trigger that caused like the craving trigger now this new emotional response. Yeah. And rehearse that enough times. Excellent. And something you had mentioned that is how we hallucinate all the time, and that can be sort of difficult to imagine. But I did this. I have this one poem. It's a sonnet that I had memorized, and I performed it to a group. It only takes like a minute to perform, and it's incredibly visual. And I was looking at a couple of people as I was reciting it, and they began to glaze over. I mean, I realized the only way you can understand this concept of this story that sonnet has is to make pictures in your mind. And some of them, their eyes were darting back and forth as if they were in a rapid eye dream.
Isn't that interesting?
And then, and it's just completely amazing. I'm a little self-conscious about it, but if the people listening here want to hear it, I'd be happy to recite it. It does take only a minute. Are you okay with that?
Sure. Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I want you to notice that in order to really understand this particular poem, your mind cannot do anything but make pictures of it. So even though you may try to not visualize, your mind is going to do it anyway. The poem is a sonnet which consists of 14 lines. 14 lines, generally most sonnets tell a very simple story, usually about a relationship. And this sonnet is called the Sonnet of the Sun and Sea, and it is about the sun and the sea. So it goes like this. The sea has bared her body to the sun, her beauty's boundless body and earth tears. The waves lie still as daylight reappears, and she shivers in pure pleasure as dawn comes, surrendering to light when night is done. She wraps the cradled morning in her crests, reflects the warming waters to his face. She heats the afternoon across her breasts as he looks back and longs for her in space. At last he comes and kisses her goodbye. For this one single kiss he nears, until the air between them disappears, and all that's left is a magenta sky with orange flame works where the long clouds lie. And that's it.
That's awesome.
And
I like that.
yeah, I know it totally hypnotizes people. It forces them to hallucinate, and just people might be rewinding it to listen to it again, I'm sure. But when I first heard that, and I read it in an internet forum like 20 years ago. I don't even know who wrote it, but I copied it down, and for the last 20 years I've had it in memory, and I recite occasionally. But the nature of it forces someone to hallucinate, and I think that's just the most amazing thing about it. So yes, you can hallucinate when you don't think you normally do.
Well, and I think we don't like to admit that we hallucinate because we like to think that our perceptions are based in reality, and we don't like to think that we might be hallucinating, right?
Yeah.
Auditorily or visually. So that's one of those things that people, when we talk about it, they see it as being kind of abnormal and strange, and oh gosh, that doesn't happen to me. Yeah, it does. Yeah, you hallucinate all the time, and
you see that attractive person, and do not tell me you don't imagine them naked. That is hallucinating.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that.
Or like the real innocent and innocuous example that I give in my book of a guy making a sandwich. He's looks on the table because he wants to make a sandwich for lunch, and he wants to use some mustard, and it's usually on the table at times like this, and it's not there. So he goes through the refrigerator, and he's looking for this mustard, or mayo or whatever, and he just doesn't see it. And then the wife comes in, asks you, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm looking for the mustard. I can't find it anywhere. I've looked through the refrigerator twice already," and she points it out on that shelf. Well, that's a perfect example of a negative hallucination. It happens to all of us all the time, and not only just with mustard when we're making a sandwich, but for some people it'll be their glasses. For another person it'll be their keys. Happens.
I went walking around looking for my cell phone, and I had it in my hand. So.
Yep, exactly. That is a hallucination.
And typically what I've noticed is when you lose things like your keys and stuff like that, it's because you are lost in a thought or a memory.
Yep.
And it overtakes the senses in an amazing way. It's just really bizarre. You really become dissociated from, what's actually taking place.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And I wanted to give a heads up here, which is this next month, starting in July 2017, we are going to be have our own channel on SoundCloud. And so instead of how we've been doing it recently, which is just through a Google Share link, you'll be able to have all of the Hypnotorious podcasts available to you with their various links, and feel free to comment, of course, and share it with other people. So I want to give a heads up that we have that coming up within the next couple of weeks. So that'll be certainly a relief to me and a benefit to everyone else. And it will also give everyone an opportunity to give advice and suggestions about what we can talk about.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So anything else? One of the things you and I were mentioning before we actually started the recording is about how the business ebbs and flows. And I do find that really amazing. I could never really figure out the pattern. But sometimes it's just like we are booked and exhausted and working like crazy. And then all of a sudden, we're panicking because the phone isn't ringing. So one of the things that I try to do is always have some projects on the side. But when you sort of look back on the patterns of ebbs and flows of business, what advice would you give somebody who has their own hypnosis
Good
practice?
question, because I have a pretty extensive background in sales. That's where I got my start in hypnosis. That's where I first started to apply it for myself, because I worked in sales, commission sales specifically, in all kinds of things over the years, from insurance to selling mattresses and various things. And it's important to remember that you're not alone. This happens in any kind of an environment where, and basically being a self-employed hypnotherapist, you are in commission sales, essentially. So there are going to be ups and downs. You may notice that particular seasons are busier than others, or just inexplicably things may just get really busy. And inversely, things may just really slow down for no apparent reason. Right. That's just the fickle nature of the beast. So it's important to, first of all, be aware and be expecting that to happen. And don't dismay, because eventually things will turn around. But it's good, it's useful, I've found, to have ways of bringing in additional clients, different streams that you can tap into to bring in clients in those times when things do get slow. You should always be working on creating new ways of bringing in clients.
And
right?
and yeah, during the slow times, it's opportunities to write articles,
right?
To offer. I love public speaking, so I'll be calling up every Optimus, Kiwanis, and Lions Club that I can think of to say, hey, you got a meeting where you're serving a meal, and I could give a presentation. So that's always fun. So there's always something that you can do to sort of continue the outreach.
Yeah. Right now, I'm working on learning how to navigate Facebook as far as generating leads that way.
Right.
And it's a unique animal. And you don't want to just dive in and throw a bunch of money at it without knowing what you're doing, because you can burn through a lot of cash in a hurry. But it's good to play with it, experiment, maybe get some books and learn about how that's done. Because I've heard some good things about doing social media, Facebook in particular, but it has to be done right.
Right. I remember my wife has a brick and mortar business, and she started putting some of her stuff on Amazon, and all of a sudden we started to realize, hey, this internet stuff could be the new thing. Yeah, it really could be.
This new internet thing, how long has it been around?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, this has been great. Hey, John, thank you so much for taking part and sharing your
always
insight.
Fun.
And man, we are going to work really hard to make sure that every week we have something great here and something new. Locally, I mean, here where John and I are located, we're sort of near the same area. We're having a regular meetup, and I just want to encourage anybody out there who is interested in hypnosis or NLP to think about forming you could do a meetup, you could do a study group, you could get together and just share what you know. And I've done it. I think one of the things we'll do probably next time is talk about the type of format that you can use if you're getting together with a bunch of people to talk about skills in hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming and things
Sure.
like that. So, and if anyone's interested in doing that, feel free to give me a call. I'll coach you through the whole process, and it's really fun. It really is.
Yeah, and check out our books. David's
Yes, indeed.
the author of several books, many of them under the name Dantalian Jones, which are great.
Yeah, if you want my books, all of them are on the website mindcontrolpublishing.com. So that's the easiest way to find all of my material. There are some others as well. John has his book, The Ultimate Guide to Hypnosis. And, of course, please...
It's available on Amazon.
Yep, available on Amazon. If any of you listening have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Leave us some comments, some notes, whatever you feel. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome.
John,
Thanks,
it's been
David.
a pleasure.
Yes, it has.
All right.
Always fun. Take care.
Take care. Bye.